Hey, I'm Brian, and welcome to Vinyl.paints. And in this episode, we're going to be doing a cell conversion of Teen Titans Go. As you guys know, we're coming up to convention season, and I'm getting really busy just painting away, but I didn't want to wait another month or two before I released another video. So I decided to do something a little bit different for this video. In this video, I'm going to respond to some of your questions, as well as start a new segment where I highlight some of the amazing cell stuff that people have been sharing with me. So make sure to stick around to the end of the video to see our featured cell painter all the way from Brazil, Jérome. SSR Rocco asks, have you tried using Duralar acetate alternative or wet media clear films to ink and paint? A good question that I get all the time. I actually do use Duralar all the time. It's an amazing product. I actually like it because it's actually quite durable and it's thick, which means you don't have to worry so much about cell warpage and other issues. It also comes in various sizes, so you can kind of scale up your project. It's also much more forgiving than some of the cells because it's a bit thicker and not quite as prone to warpage. So it's great for beginners. And if you're not looking to make an animation and you don't care about port keys and portholes and peg holes or whatever else, I actually would recommend it if you just want to do a couple one-off cell paintings and kind of hone your craft. Lana Visuals asks, have you ever tried out Xeroxing or even special effects on your cells? Oh, that's a really interesting question. I guess, I don't know if you would qualify it as special effects, but I've tried putting LEDs on cell paintings and fiber optics. If you go back to one of my earlier videos, I did screen tones on a cell. So to me, I consider those all kind of special effects. I'm not doing any of the special effects like how Disney would have classified it with airbrush. The airbrushing setup is just too expensive and I've never done it, so I've kind of stayed away from that. But I guess I feel like I've been trying special effects. As for the Xeroxing, I haven't tried Xeroxing. I did originally start by getting some acetate or projector slides and putting them through my printer. Messy, didn't work out quite the way I wanted to, and yeah, problematic. But I have run into a few people at conventions who have said that they've been able to use Xeroxing to pretty good effect, and they've shown me some of the stuff they've done. So when it comes to laser Xeroxing, it's definitely something I want to experiment more with. I just need to find the time and money. Bloop Dino asks, what do you use the tool for painting in cell? I think what he was asking is what kind of tools do I use? Everything I use is pretty standard. I use brushes, whatever ones I can. For purposes of the videos, I use a lot of the angled brushes. They don't come in every size, but I just find the way that I hold my hand, they make it more visual so the camera can see what I'm doing better. I have a port key. They're really hard to find, but you can find them still. And in terms of paint, I always try to use as realistic materials and paints as possible, which means I try to stick to vinyl paints. And right now your options are either Lopi paint, Chromacolor, if you can find Toon Tones, but they're kind of hard because they're out of business, and flashy vinyl paints. 1 in 1,000 asks, when you do your colored line art, do you use India ink, Sumi ink, like you would with your black line art, or do you use diluted paint? 1 in 1,000? That is a great question. The answer to that is yes. As in, yes, I do all of the above. Typically speaking, I will try and use diluted paint. The reason why I do that is because you're going to get a closer match to your actual skin tones that you use. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. However, sometimes I choose not to do that out of stylistic choice. For example, any of the Clone Wars stuff I do by Gendy, he has like these very thick, blocky, punchy outlines. And for those ones, I specifically use the Posca paint markers because I just like the way that they stand out better. I think they better represent his style. So quick answer, yes. Mostly you're going to be using diluted paint though. Thank you for your question. Aaron Too Good asks, do you think you'll ever sell your port keys? I hope not. I do have like 6 now. You know what? When you're doing an animation and you're painting them, I like to put one on every port key so that I can just kind of like rotate through and do like an assembly line style. So I know this might be a weird answer, but I'm actually looking for more port keys because right now I only have 6, so I can only do 6 paintings at a time. And I know that sounds like a lot, but when you're animating, it's not. Addictive Minds asks, are you using an ink nib to paint the cells instead of a brush? Why is this? Is this standard practice? Another amazing question. Is this standard practice? I don't know. I've definitely seen videos of people who used to cell paint using this technique. And if you want a precise image, you probably will end up using a dip pen nib to kind of get in those smaller reach places. The reason why you don't want to use a brush is because you're not really painting in a cell painting. You're kind of hovering over the cell. You're kind of pushing the paint around. You're not actually trying to hit the canvas. So you find that getting into those tight little corners can be very difficult with a brush. So sometimes a nib makes it a little bit easier. Is it standard? So is it standard practice? I don't know. It was definitely used. I don't know if it was standard. But the reason why I do this is because on smaller paintings, it's probably the only way you'll be able to control the paint. 999 Yup asks, I was wondering, how do you keep the shadow shading consistent when painting? I'm going to try to answer this question from a cell painting point of view, not necessarily an animation point of view. So I would 100% recommend that you look up an animator who actually kind of goes over the shadowing process for traditional animation, because that's the process that you would use on a cell painting. The shadows are usually determined in the line art. When I say are usually, I mean like it's always determined if you're doing an animation, because you don't want any surprises. Sometimes you might see me making this up on the channel, but if I'm just doing a one-off cell painting, I have a lot more room to play around with the shadows and the tones. But on an actual animated project, that would all be defined in the line art phase. So for the second part of that, is there a way of mapping things out so it stays fluid? Yes, that's what you do the line art for, and that's why I do colored line art, so that way I know exactly where the shadows are gonna go. So that when I put a cell down, I don't just have the black line art, I have the actual shadow tones, the highlights, everything is already available, so now I just have to fill it in. Great question. Azilla Man asks, why do you like having the peg holes on the top instead of the bottom? Now this is a very fascinating question, because if you watch, a lot of animators prefer to have the peg holes on the bottom so they could flip through, and it was easier to look at their animations and kind of go through them and see what it would turn out like. But how I learned how to cell paint was by reverse engineering it from my cell collection. And I would say almost 95% of the cells I have in my collection were all painted with the peg bars on top. So because the paintings were wet, they never really had to flip through them. And it just made more sense to leave them on the top. It was probably what was easiest. Great question. Persona Random 7107 says that it's possible to use gouache paints from brands like Hoboken and Liquidex. What do you think about that? I've really wanted to try the Hoboken gouache paints for a while. I wanted to include them in that video I did where I compared paints, but I just couldn't get my hands on them. They were really expensive and the colors available to me just didn't work. As for Liquidex, Liquitex, I'm not sure whether those are going to work or not. Like, I do have a Liquidex, which is like a acrylic ink, and they're way too transparent. Now, I know they have a bunch of different products, so maybe some of the other products would work. The question isn't so much whether you can actually paint on a piece of plastic, it's whether you can make it animation grade. And by that means you're going to have to make it smooth. You can't have that chunky texture that you get on glass painting, and that I don't know. I haven't used any of these products, but I definitely want to try the Hobian or whatever it is, Hobian. But if you are looking for an alternative and you can't get your hands on Chromacolor, you can use Flashe. It's sold around the world, and I've looked it up. It is available in Mexico, and it will be slow to dry, but it'll do the job. Dominic asks, I'm in the process of making a whole cut from the show Furin episode 01. C172. I don't know it, but I hope it's good. What paint do you use? I'm planning on using acrylic paint. Hi Dominic, I would definitely say I would recommend using Chromacolor. There are a bunch of cell paint alternatives, but the one that's going to give you the least amount of problem, the one that's going to dry the smoothest, the flattest, and probably realistically the quickest is Chromacolor. With that said, could you use acrylic? Absolutely. Just be careful that you don't get too much texturing on the back, because if you get too much texturing on the back, you're not going to be able to stack your cells and you're going to end up with some very weird results. But make sure to share this with me when you're done. I really want to see it. It sounds really cool. Rubber Hose Rookie asks, what's that transparent color thing that you use in your videos all the time? What you're seeing is my paint swabs or my color selector. Pretty much it has every base color that I have in cell paint. And from there I can determine, do I have something that matches it, which is always my preferred option. And if I don't have something that matches it, at least I can find the color closest to it that I can kind of work towards mixing it to that color. If anyone ever buys any of these chroma color sets or Toontown or any kind of animation set, I highly recommend doing this. It will save you a lot of time, because sometimes the color that you see in the bottle or what you see online is not the actual color it dries. And when I was doing my animation project, I ended up having to stop doing the project and actually take time to actually put the color swabs of every paint I had before I continued the project, because it was just taking too long and there was too many mistakes happening. Manny Farina asks, do you have any problems with small bubbles when applying chroma color? Also, do you recommend any specific type of brush for larger areas to color solid? Many bubbles are going to be something you fight against for your entire time cell painting. Now, there are ways around it. The first way is you can use a lighter to pop the bubbles. You can do it inside the tray, which is the safe way. It's the way I recommend because you're not putting your cell at risk. I've been a little bit reckless at times, and I've definitely popped them while on the cell with a butane lighter, but I would highly recommend against this, because if you're just off a little bit, you can absolutely melt or warp your cell. The second way is a little bit more manual. If you don't have too many bubbles or you just have the occasional one, you can use a dip pen or toothpick, and that works perfectly. You just pop them as you see them. The third way, if depending on how you're doing it, is if you have a port key, just reach on the back and kind of like tap on it, hit it a little bit. I don't find it as effective, but it has worked, and I've seen videos of cell painters in the past. They used to do that a lot, but it's not overly effective. The other thing you can do to reduce the bubbles is when you actually mix the paint. If you add water into the paint, mix it slowly. Don't go as fast as you can. Even though going as fast as you can will mix it faster or get it job done quicker, it will create more bubbles. So a slow, continuous mix will reduce your amount of bubbles you get. What is the preferred chroma color mix rate? This is a tricky one here. You got to be careful with. I've heard people say that chroma color doesn't recommend that you add any water. I've found though, if you want to animate with it, it's necessary to add water. I find that usually 5 drops of paint to 1 part water usually is the right mix for chroma color. Sometimes, depending if it's drier, it might need a little bit more. Some colors need a little bit less, but usually 5:1 is the ratio that I use for chroma color. Unknown Character asks if I've ever used acrylic gouache, for example, Holbein. Gouache should technically work. I don't know for sure it will, but when animation first started, that's what they actually used. They didn't have vinyl paint. That was developed as the years went on to make the process faster, more efficient, and better. But originally, they used a gouache. So I gotta try this Holbein. Holbein or whatever it is. I'm really interested. You're the second person who's mentioned it, so I'm gonna have to give that a try on my next comparison video. Thanks for the question, Unknown Character. SSR Rocco Report asks, did you purchase those cell paints from Japan? Carliti asks, what's the update on the Japanese brand? So what's the update on this Japanese brand? That's a tricky question, because I made a whole video on it, and it's actually a very complicated thing. Long story as short as possible, it's a good product. It's hard to get. If you don't live in Japan, you won't probably be able to order. And if you visit their store in Japan, you can only buy whatever colors they have in stock and in 12 milliliter bottles, which is next to nothing in animation terms. So yeah, I'm going to try to find different ways of getting it, but right now it's really not a viable option unless you're in Japan. Carliti also asks, how are you spending $2 per cell sheet? Have you had success finding other plastic sheets like transparencies or clear acrylic? I don't know how to read that. Are you like surprised? Is it like $2 like, oh, that's cheap? Or it's like $2, that's a lot. But the answer is the same either way. I say $2 because it's $1.40 something per cell sheet US dollars. Converted into Canadian, that's roughly $2. Now, there are ways to make it cheaper. If you buy 100 sheets, it's cheaper than buying 10 sheets. But for the purposes of my videos, I always try to make it the most accessible, so the most expensive price, so that way you know roughly what the worst case scenario is going to be. As for the second part of your question, have I tried transparencies or clear acrylic? Most of the transparencies I have found are too thin. They get warped or they're just not the best quality in order to do a cell painting. I have found other options or other mediums that work, like Duralar wet medium. I think it's fantastic, but it's actually not cheaper than what it costs to buy a cell. In fact, it's a little bit more, and it's also not punched, so you can run into problems when lining up your animation. I want to thank everyone for their amazing questions. I'm sorry I couldn't answer them all in this video, but it was already getting a little longer than I would have liked, but I'm going to try to make another one of these in the future. I do try to make it a habit to respond to all questions and comments on my videos, so please leave a comment and I'll try my best to get back to you. This episode's featured cell painter is Jérome from Brazil.
United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Haiti, Jamaica, Peru, Republic, Dominican, Cuba, Caribbean, Greenland, El Salvador too, Puerto Rico, Colombia, Venezuela, Honduras, Guyana, and still Guatemala, Bolivia, then Argentina, and Ecuador, Chile, Brazil.
Here's Jérome working on his handmade portkey. I just love how all cell painters are kind of problem solvers because they're just not making any new equipment, so we have to kind of make and figure out our own. Everyone will have their own preferences of brush. Jérome was nice enough to send us a picture of the brushes that he's been using for cell painting. And this is his Superman. And look at the finish on it. The back is just so flat and has very little texturing. Just absolutely amazing. I think this one is from Battle of the Planets. I'm not 100% sure, but either way, it looks absolutely amazing. The color on this looks like straight out of an 80s anime. And that's how you know it's good, because I don't necessarily know where it is, but just looking at this, I'm like, this is 80s, this is anime, this is amazing. Great job, Jérome. And the last one I'm gonna share with you guys in this video is his classic Batman, just classic blue and gray. And very little texturing on the back. Just absolutely amazing. Thank you, Jérome. I really enjoyed doing this, and I'd like to keep doing it. So make sure to keep sharing your cell paintings with me. You can reach me via Instagram or email. Contact is in the description. Well, I really liked how this Teen Titans turned out. It's amazing how cell painting just adds something a little bit different, a different look to it, almost a different aesthetic. This coming June 5th through 7th, I'll be at Niagara Falls Comic-Con in Artist Alley in booth A47. I'm excited. I hope to see you there. As always, thanks for watching. I'm Brian, and this is Vinyl Paints.